Welcome to Unity Talks, where the hiring experts of Dallas-based recruiting firm Unity Search engage in lively discussion with successful business leaders to dissect their careers and how they got to where they are today, the obstacles overcome to reach their success, and steps they've taken to stay at the top of their respective fields. So listen in as we provide you with the thought-provoking conversation and ideas that keep industries moving forward.
And welcome to the Unity Talks podcast. I'm your host, David Cathey, and we're so thankful that you're here today joining us again. And we're going to jump right into this because we have another guest here, and it is Chris Doty. He is the CFO of Siepe Group. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Usually I start with a little bit of a longer introduction, but man, we've got a lot of material to cover here, and this is going to be great. And here's how we're going to start. We are going to start, before we get too far in, Chris, you got to explain, what is Siepe? I mean, what a strange name for someone just hearing it. So what does Siepe do?
Yeah, we're actually a software as a service company. We're geared towards, we're fintech geared towards asset managers. So your typical hedge funds, mutual funds, family offices. We also work with private equity firms, as well as third-party administrators in the industry. Siepe, it's always a good icebreaker. Most people don't know how to pronounce it. It's an Italian name, and the name means hedge in Italian. Our CEO is heritage is part Sicilian, and so he wanted to pay some type of homage to his family when he created the company, and hence the name Siepe. So he wanted to have some tie to the industry, so it's like I said, it's a good icebreaker whenever people can't say the name and we correct them. Like, okay, what does that even mean?
Exactly.
So, what do you guys do?
Yeah. Well, you did a good job explaining it because it needs to be in layman's terms. Because I'm sitting here going, Siepe, how do I pronounce it?
Right.
I'm going to screw it up really early on. So
That's okay.
Thankfully, I didn't. And now I know what they do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Well, and here's the other thing. So before we get too far in, we got to recognize married and two girls. So shout out to the two girls, right?
Yes.
Middle school
Girls, and my wife, who obviously takes care of everything at home, and we call her the COO of the family, and is a great supportive group and unit for me and everything that we do, and I couldn't be successful either in my career or with Siepe. Any of us could without our families that have our support every day.
Absolutely. So you have a CEO at work.
Yes.
And you've got a CEO.
Yes,
so you
I
answer
do.
to, no matter what happens, you're answering to someone.
I'm always answering to somebody, right? You know the old adage, right? There's always somebody to answer to, even if you think you're at the top. So
I love it. All right, so we're going to go back because we always start out with someone's upbringing. And here's the reason why. I mean, when we start out with people's upbringing, people are shaped to a certain degree on how they were brought up, where they were brought up, and they carry that with them through the rest of their lives. And for you, and here's the deal, I'm going to put a caveat on this, okay? My disclaimer is, this is Chris talking, okay? So I am a military brat. Again, he's the one that said military brat, and he's the black sheep. So let's find out why he's a military brat and why he's the black sheep.
Sure. So I was born into the military. My father and my mother both were in the Air Force. That's where they met. I was born in California, and from there, just like a typical military family, we moved around both within the United States and abroad, and it's you have your stereotypical, it's rigid. There's structure. It's built. Your life is built around respect of others, and obviously respect of our country and what it stands for. But there's other things that you have to learn along the way, and probably the biggest thing is that you move from town to town or base to base. Each of those bases is like a community or a family or a team, and so you learn early on in life that there's more than just your core unit family. There's a bigger family out there, and we always try to have each other's backs, and you make friends along the way, you lose friends along the way, and so with that comes the ability to adapt, right? You're having to adapt to new communities, new surroundings, new people, new cultures, and you don't realize it at the time, but as you grow up and you get older, you find that makes adapting to new companies and new structures and new employees and new bosses not as scary or not as intimidating, because of what you've gone through in your upbringing.
Yep. Yeah, and I don't want to touch on that, but before I touch on that, we can't let the black sheep go, because
yes, I forgot about that.
I don't want to be accused by your family who's going to watch this.
Yes.
Like, who's this guy calling him a black sheep?
So again, growing up and moving and seeing your friends come and go and moving around the country and around the world, it just for me. My father, my mother, my aunts, my uncles, my two brothers are both retired military now. It just was not the life for me. I didn't want to be transient in nature. I'm the type of person that likes to stay put in one area. And I didn't really want people telling me what to do and ordering me around in that certain way anyway. But I love and respect our military. I'm a military history buff. I enjoy reading and watching documentaries and understanding our history and why we do what we do as a military. And like I said, I have the utmost respect for everyone and anyone who has ever served our country.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, my dad was in the Air Force as well, and it was not a direction that I went either.
Yes.
So let's put ourselves, like our listeners, let's put ourselves in the mind of someone who grew up in the military, and you're living in different countries on bases, but you're acclimating to different cultures. And so there's a component of discipline, as you mentioned, that you probably still carry with you today, whether it's self-discipline or just the actions you take within your organization. And there's also a component of you're always new. Oh, it's the new kid on the base. Oh, it's the new kid in a school. Oh, he's got to make friends with kids from different cultures. And so there's relationship building, right? And so do you think and how has the relationship building and the discipline worked its way into your life as a leader of an organization?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is the relationships. I've prided myself throughout my career on how you build relationships, both with people you work with on a direct basis every day, but how do you build those relationships across the company, interdepartmental, or with clients and vendors and such. And it had a huge impact on me because, again, as you see friends come and go and families come and go that you get close with over a couple of years span, and then it's their time to move on, that person's in a difficult situation, and then the kid or the family coming in behind them is in one as well. And so you realize and empathize for the situations that people are in. So you try to do your best to welcome them and accommodate them and make them feel a part of the family and a part of the team. And it's similar in nature in a company, right? When we hire a new person, or I've ever gone to a new company, the first thing I want to do is how do I relate to people, and how do I work with them and create relationships. I think those relationships go a long way into determining how effective you can be and how effective your team can be. And again, we don't need to sit around at a campfire and sing Kumbaya every weekend or anything like that. But if you have strong working relationships and actually communicate, whether it's verbally or written or with your body language, I think it goes a long way into how you can be successful in whatever you do.
Yeah. I like that you said verbally written, but you also included body language. And I think that's pretty important. Usually you hear people say verbal, right? Some written, but the body language is really important, especially when you're doing one-on-ones with your team, or you're sitting across the table from someone that you're negotiating with.
Right.
And you're able to view their body language, and that is telling a story. And sometimes it's a different story than what they're verbally saying.
I would agree, right? And that's one thing. Again, a shout out to my wife, because it's she's was a successful salesperson before she changed careers and focused more on family and community and that sort of thing. But that's something that she taught me, that as a sales expert or a sales executive is reading people's body language and how you can adapt your conversation or your relationship or your interaction based on that body language, right? And try to always do it in a positive manner that can, again, foster that relationship or foster the success of a deal.
Yes.
And so as an accountant by trade, it was great lessons to learn from her. So.
Well, yeah, and like you can use those lessons as the person that is fiscally responsible for your organization, and let's say that it's a publicly traded company, And so you have to have auditors come in, right? And everybody views auditors a certain way. They usually sit in a room with no walls and it's like a dungeon, or, how do you use that relationship building to your advantage as someone on the client side, which many times has a different objective than the person on the auditing side?
Sure. Yeah, I think from an audit perspective, it's interesting. I never worked in the Big Six arena and that sort of thing, so I only saw it from the corporate or the commercial side of things. I always took the approach when I was at a level that I was the one managing the client relationship with our auditors. It's how do I create a relationship that's mutually beneficial for us, right? Am I going to stick them in a closet, or am I going to accommodate them and put them in an area that helps them be effective at what they do? How do I make myself accessible? How do I kind of create the expectations that I'm here for you, I'm accessible, just don't come into my office or come into my cube, every 5 seconds, right? Establish the ground rules and the setting. And I think that really has helped me in my career be effective in achieving, whether it's been internal control reviews or an audit or attestations of financial statements or whatever it is. How do I help them be successful so they can help me be successful? And to me, at least in my experience, it's been a great way to approach working with auditors. And then from a client perspective, my clients could be, our customers, or they could be vendors. It depends on my relationship or what I'm actually doing with them, whether I'm negotiating a contract or trying to get a customer to pay their bills, or understanding what their situation is. And so again, it's how do I create an environment that both of us can be successful at what we're trying to do? And to me, that has paid off a lot more than trying to be rigid or standoffish or whether it's abrasive or however you want to say it, or difficult to work with. And so we take that approach at Siepe, and I think that's what makes us work so well together. Our CEO and myself is we share a lot of those same values, and we learn a lot from each other and how we can effectively have those relationships, again, be mutually beneficial.
Yeah. You're trying to create partnerships all the way around.
All the way.
That's what it is. You're building relationships, you're creating partnerships, whether it's internal, whether it's up, down, across, or with vendors. And it's creating those partnerships. But here's the thing. March 2020, we went remote.
Right.
And now we're starting to come back, and most companies, at least that we deal with, are doing some type of hybrid approach.
Right.
Or they have plans for a hybrid approach.
Right.
How does that switch impact building partnerships? How does that switch impact building relationships with the people on your team?
It impacts it greatly. We've actually, experienced a tremendous amount of growth over the last 2 years. Despite our, the pandemic impacted, economy. We've hired people that have never set foot in our office. We've hired people that, for one reason or another, maybe we couldn't get the video chat to work or whatever it may be, that we've never even seen in person. And I've seen a picture on LinkedIn or whatever it may be. And so it's that personal relationship that you try to create with an employee and get them to buy into your organization and what you're trying to do has been severely impacted. And so, what we've had to do is take a step back and just be more focused on what are we going to do to bridge those gaps. You're not in person, or a person, you may be in the same city, but that person doesn't feel comfortable coming into the office. Or how do you create an environment that they are comfortable to come into the office and six feet apart, or wear a mask, or whatever it is that we can do to accommodate that situation. We've had to really rethink that because we were all just used to everybody being in person. Yeah. Historically, if you've got offices around the country and people working around the country, you had to interact with them anyway, one way, shape, or another. But a lot of times it was just more casual. You would do it, via audio and not necessarily video. And so, we did what a lot of companies do, right? Video chat, happy hours, and those types of things where, people are on there and their kids are coming in the background, or their dogs are barking, and those types of things were taboo in the past if you worked from home.
Absolutely.
And so again, it's just how I go back to my military upbringing and the way that we always had to adapt to our environment in many different ways. this was just kind of another way. It just happened to be a new way, right? How do we adapt to this situation and make the best of it? And then we're not perfect.
Yeah.
But I think we've done things, to the best of our ability during this situation.
Well, it requires you to be much more intentional when you're trying to build a culture of an organization that has overnight become a disparate workforce.
Yes.
And it's based largely on how people feel. And I think the other thing, like you went back to your military upbringing on the side of, surrounding a community and things like that. But I think as a leader of an organization, you have to go back to your military background and have the discipline to be intentional about it. Because I don't know about you, but speaking for me, it's like, man, we've got to continue this community within our organization. We got to maintain this culture. So we need to do the online happy hour, and we need to have the little quizzes and all. And sometimes you don't want to do that because you're already at home. And it's like, oh man, I want to do it because I want to see everybody, but I also don't want to do it because my kids are outside playing and I'd like to go enjoy some time with them. And that's where that discipline of we got to get it scheduled because we got to do this for the health of the company.
Yes. Yeah, I think you hit it right on. It's being intentional and again, experiencing all the challenges that came along with the pandemic and working from home and disparate workforce and all those things that impacted it, and going through a period of growth. And so your mindset tends to focus more on what's the urgency. I was talking about this with a member of my team today, and focus so much more on the urgency of what we have to get done related to reacting to the changing environment or reacting to our growth and all the things that need to take place, but what's most important, right? And again, we pride ourselves, and we talk a lot about culture and trust and transparency and all these things. And that's what's important. And so you have to be intentional about that and focus on those things, just not lose sight of it. And sometimes you do. So then, how do you get yourself back on track?
Yeah.
And that's an everyday challenge for all of us.
I can promise you, Chris isn't getting royalties from Stephen Covey and urgency and importance, but you're right. That's Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, the difference between urgency and importance. But here, you had a great segue earlier, so we're going to go there now, which is you've been at Siepe for just over 7 years, about 7 years, 3 or 4 months, something like that. Tell us about the growth, because we want to go into how fast Siepe's grown, and we can brush over that quickly, but it is a standard set that we want to have to help us with the later conversation. So let's talk about Siepe's growth, how it's happened, the headcount, and what the near future might look like. Knock on wood, all things continue to go the way it has.
Yeah, I mean, we started out, again, as a startup 9 years ago. We just celebrated our 9th birthday, and started out small. We had intentionally done things certain ways to the first few years, the growth was pretty mild or pretty tepid. And really, it's only been in the last, 24 months or so that we've really seen a tremendous amount of growth, both on the sales side and with our people. And several factors, were the cause of that. One, if you start back about 5 years ago when we moved up to Midtown out of downtown Dallas, we found that it was a struggle to get people to come into downtown. Great companies down there. It's a great environment. I miss it, but that really fueled the growth to be a little bit more kind of where the growth was going on in the city. And so we're acknowledging that and understanding that that could help us as a company grow. And then really focusing on marketing and sales that we hadn't really done before, branching out and opening an office in New York City and taking those risks and those leaps that is this going to pay off. And then last summer, we raised capital. So we went through our first ever Series A, and that obviously came with expectations from our investors and our plans and how are we going to execute on those plans. And so those kind of areas are what catapulted us in our growth. And so when you look at last year, we today we're at around 65, 66 all in FTE. last year, this year we've added 20 people to get to that number, and last year we added over 20 people as well. And so when you think about you're doubling your workforce in a 2-year span, that's an immense amount of growth for a small company. So then we've had to focus on, well, where do we need to bring in help that we try to grow within and provide people opportunities to take on more responsibilities, but we also have to be understanding that we don't have all the answers, and so we needed to bring in people from with industry experience and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so and then when you look at going forward, if we continue our pathway and the success and build upon that, we're looking to add probably another 15 people this year, and probably another 15 to 20 or so more next year.
Yeah, it's crazy. So here are my 2 rapid fire questions on that alone. Yeah. Top 2 learning lessons from that ridiculous growth.
Well, as crazy as it may sound, and as crazy as the last 24 months have been and will continue to be, I think one of the things that when we look back, we probably should have moved faster sooner. From building our sales organization and taking that risk to put that out there, and then we talk about this all the time, and we talked about when we should go out and take external capital or external funding, and so we kid about it now that maybe we should have now that it's working, right? Maybe we should have done that a little bit sooner, and so that's probably one of the biggest lessons. And then we started out and really are still kind of a hybrid flat organization. And we've been a flat organization for a long time. And so from an organizational approach with our people, it wasn't really until last year that we started taking a really deep look into what are they doing for us? What are their skill sets? Where do they need to grow? And where do they want to go? And where do we need them to go, right? And so that was a big change for us to just take a step back and really focus on where your people want to be, because they don't just want a job, right? They want a place of belonging. They want a place of succeeding. And then how do they get rewarded for that success, right? Where do you give them the opportunity, what we call leveling up? How can I master my skill set? How can I build upon that? And how can I level up and take on more responsibility for the company and help us be successful? Yeah. Because it's not just me, it's not just our CEO or our head of sales, it's collectively as a team. And so we took that approach and implemented that, and we're still fine-tuning a few things, but we really want to focus on, we're going to bring in individuals to be a part of our team, and how can they be a part of our success and have a long-term sustainable position and role with the company. Yeah. So those are probably the 2.
We may not even get to the rest of what I have on my run sheet, because we're just going to pause right here and talk about that, because that's important. You go through growth really fast. Flat organization. You can't have 3 leaders, 4 leaders with 66 people, okay, 65. It's just not going to happen. So now you go through the process of what you just described. How do we find other leaders? Okay, so you're working through that. Now you're creating a structure. You're creating a succession plan. You're creating a career path, okay? You're doing all those things. How do you develop people into being the leader that Siepe needs? How do you, because they've just been producers.
Right.
They've just been software developers. It's been flat, and now all of a sudden in a 2-year time frame, it can't be flat anymore.
Right.
How do you develop people?
Yeah, it's the $1 million question, right? And we're still going through that. I think what we have to do is leverage back on our own experiences at our levels and the management team. And what we try to do is seek outside advice and try to get people who have gone through this before to give us their input. And that's one thing that we pride ourselves on, is we don't think we know all the answers, and we're going to ask the questions and seek the advice and input of others. But I think as far as developing them in the leaders, it's helping them understand the transition of what you were great as a doer. Now we need you to be great as a leader and manager of whatever that is that we're putting you in charge of. And so instill that upon them, instill confidence in them, let them know they're going to make mistakes, and rectify the mistakes and move on and not dwell on them. Give them the opportunity to fail, right? Michael Jordan always said, right, I failed on 100% of the shots I never took, right?
That's right.
And so I want them to take those shots. I want them to take those risks. And we've instilled, a training program into our what we offer our employees. We haven't been the best at doing that, so it's something that we've identified that we've got to get better at. And it's, again, seeking out opportunities or ways in which to help instill those leadership qualities in them. We talked about this before, and that is, I'm a believer. Some people believe their leaders are born, and some people believe that leaders are created. And I think it could be either or. I don't necessarily think I was born a leader, but I had a lot of opportunities to go to leadership classes or leadership seminars and leadership schools throughout my career, and I think that really helped me. And so, how can I take that experience and help others become leaders? And we have a mentoring program within our company, and we have to make sure that we are diligent about doing those mentor meetings and sharing those experiences and helping them understand what it takes to make that transition from being a great doer to a great leader.
Well, I would say this, you guys should be recognized for the fact that you have to be humble enough to know that you don't know everything and that you can seek outside counsel and ask for advice, because sometimes you get to that point and it's like, well, we're a 15-person organization, a 20-person organization. I know it all. And then 2 years, boom, you're 60. And it's like, man, now I don't know it all. And, that can be a hit to a pride. And you have to be humble enough to go say, I need to seek some type of resource to help us. Here's the other thing. Just because you are a great doer doesn't mean you're going to be a great leader.
Correct.
And sometimes that's a really good thing. And sometimes you learn it by trial and error, right? And I think one of the things that you have done really well at in the organization is you ask questions. You don't give the answer. What did you learn from that situation? I failed. What did you learn from failing? So it's okay that you failed. Let's just not keep failing at the same thing over and over and over again. But it's asking the questions, and I feel like leaders have a tendency, especially when you're new, it's, well, you need to do this. You need to do this. You should do this. And we're telling. We need to ask, right?
Absolutely. I think, I try to empathize with where people are in their roles and where I've come from and where I've been and the opportunities that were afforded me, the challenges that were put in front of me, the opportunity to fail and get back up from those failures. And so I had to ask myself, what did I learn from those things and how can I share those experiences? But again, it's not, to your point, I don't want to be telling somebody what to do every day. I want them to be able to, leverage their skill set, their minds, and their brilliance to be creative at how they are attacking their job every day or the task that they have in front of them. And so when they do stumble and fall, it's best to go to them and acknowledge that. But how do you learn from the failure? Again, I played sports my whole life. I'm an avid sports fan, but if you think about what do most professional or other teams do, they watch game film, right? They know they're not perfect, coaches, players, or whoever. So they go back to the film room after every game and watch film and learn from their mistakes. And so, we're not videotaping our people every day, but we can act as that game film resource for that person to ask the questions: where did you make mistakes, and how can you correct that to go forward?
Yeah, I really like that. I want to go further, but I've got to get to, because we said top 2 learning lessons. But we got to ask about what are the top 2 most exciting things from this just crazy growth, right? Because you have these learning lessons, but you equally have these just insanely exciting things. So when your feet hit the ground in the morning, you're like, man, I can't wait to get there.
Yeah, I think the first and foremost thing that sticks out to me is our success and our growth. And it didn't happen, in a flash. It's been, a long journey and a long process for 9 years. But to see us transition from a startup, and again, we're 9 years old, so we're not that old, but into what we, is looking very promising to be a very sustainable business. And to me, that's exciting to have been a part of that. I wear a lot of different hats, as you can imagine, at a small company. And so that's what's exciting to me as well, that I've had a hand in building and shaping this organization. But the one thing that we've taken as an approach as a management team is we don't manage from the top down. We don't tell them what to do. It's a collective effort. And to see how that has actually been successful has just been extremely rewarding. And then I think just building a business based in the way that we approached it. We focus on team culture. We talked about this before, about being transparent with our clients and with our people, and building those relationships. And if you look at our literature or our website or those types of things about what sets us apart or what our mission is or what our culture is, the underlying tone you'll see is trust. And we have it woven into everything that we do. And if our clients or our vendors or our people or our community can't trust us, then what's our worth and what's our value? And I'm reading a lot more today about like conscious capitalism and what that means, and that you should look beyond just corporate profits and maximizing the wealth of shareholders or executives and that sort of thing. And what I found was interesting is it's kind of how we've done it, right? We've focused on our people, we focused on our clients, we focused on relationships, and we focused on our community. And we want to do more of that from a community perspective and giving back. But we think we've had a really good start. But that's just, I don't know, it's just innate in how we've always approached things. And we don't do everything right. We're not perfect. But we're pretty excited and just very enthusiastic about where we've come from and what the future holds for us. For sure.
Absolutely. Well, I've got to get to my last question, but before I do, I have two things on what you just said. So it took you 9 years to be an overnight success. Yeah. Right? It took you 9 years to be an overnight success. That's people don't think, it's like all of a sudden it's like, boom, look at them, they're just blown up. No, it took us 9 years to get there. So that's one. The second thing, and I just read this quote this morning to my 3 business partners. I'm going to butcher it. I'm not even going to try to quote it, but it goes along with what you were just saying. The easy route for people running a business is, let's look at the numbers. Let's look at the KPIs. Let's look at what our revenue growth is. Let's look at this number right here on our income statement, our balance sheet, our cash flow, right? That's the easy way to look at a business. And that's what most leaders will fall back on, because it's easier to do that. Whereas the other side of the coin is, it's the messy, awkward conversation in dealing with people.
Right.
And people have a tendency, leaders have a tendency to avoid that because it's messy, it's awkward, it's probably a lot of things that you may not necessarily want to hear. It's probably a lot of things that you may not necessarily want to say,
right,
because it's painful. And so we opt to go with well, are we hitting our KPIs? Well, yeah, that's important. Are we hitting our revenue? That's important too. But in order to maximize those numbers, we got to do the other side and have the messiness of belly-to-belly conversations with our people and our customers and our vendors. And that's really what's going to set companies off to sell, like what you guys have done over the past 9 years, the overnight success.
Yeah.
So here's my last question.
Okay.
How does someone add value to an organization? High growth organization or not high growth organization? What do they do? You had mentioned it before. It's like you were told in your life, one of your mentors was, you have to find a way.
Yeah.
Is there a recipe? Like what's the recipe? Is there a recipe?
Well, the recipe that's been working for me for my whole career, and what I try to instill upon people who work with me on my team, is don't just focus on, it's important to know what your role is in the everyday tasks that you have to get done, but how can you look beyond that and how you can create and add value to a company? And I'm a firm believer that it doesn't matter what part of the organization you work in, what level of the organization you are, how new you are, whether it's right out of high school or right out of college, or or grad school, or you've been in the workforce for 20 or 30 years. I'm a firm believer that if you can work with people to get an understanding of how your role impacts the company and how the company works, to me, that's the recipe, to not just focus on your job and your silo with blinders on, but try to learn how the company works. Sometimes that's easy, it depends on the type of company in the industry, and sometimes it takes a while. And how do you learn that? You force yourself out of your comfort zone, which as I am in here today, but to learn about the company and get to know people in different areas of the business. And what do you do? You're in sales and marketing. Okay, tell me about what you do every day, or you're in IT, or you're a software developer. I don't expect you to learn what they do and how to code software, right? C# or whatever. I know those terms, but I don't know how to do it.
Me too.
And I only know it because of the company I work for. But how do you get yourself out of your everyday job and spend just a little bit of time learning about the company and learning about what we do, learning about what drives our revenue, what drives our growth, what drives our challenges, what drives downturns and that sort of thing. And to me, that is a way that whether you're an accountant or in clerical or in legal or whatever, to me, I think that adds value to the business and it makes you more valuable to the business.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So it's a mutual benefit that I know that if you're focusing on the company and what the company is doing, I know that it'll help you do your job better and it'll help you make the company more valuable. And I learned that early on from a mentor of mine, and it's always stuck with me.
So good.
And I try to instill that in as many people as I can. Whether you work for me or not, I'm going to try to figure out a way to help you be successful, because our success depends on yours.
So good. It's so good. It's pass the people listening, pass the message on. It's so good. Mm-hmm. It is you may think you are hired based on a job description. Partly so.
Yeah.
But throw the job description out when you get there. You got to do that job. I'm not saying like just start doing everybody's job, but do more than that job description. Go introduce yourself, which becomes harder in a remote environment or a hybrid environment. So we're going back to the word intentional. Yes. So you have to be more intentional about getting out there. Don't just sit back in your desk, especially for the younger generation. It's like, we want an instant message or text someone. Like, if you're in the office, go introduce yourself to people. Go walk around the office and find out who else is there and be involved. So be intentional. Great advice, Chris Doty. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor. It's been fun time to be here, and I'm glad hopefully I could share some insight and knowledge to you and to your audience.
Absolutely. Well, for those that are listening, we really appreciate Chris, and for everybody that is listening here today, tomorrow, next year, whenever you are listening to this podcast, number one, it's great advice. Number two, share it. Pass it on to other people. Get the information that we're trying to learn from all of these leaders that we're interviewing. It's every other week. Get the information and share it and actually apply it in your daily life. Thank you so much for joining. Until next time.
If you're looking for the next step in your career or the missing piece for your team, Unity Search has you covered. Whether it's finance and accounting, tax services, information technology, or human resources, Unity Search is here for you with experienced and dedicated hiring professionals. Reach out today and take the next step. Unity Search, placing you first.